This video is all about my top favourite shrubs. Now shrubs are a wee bit out of fashion, I would say. When I first started in the 60s, late or 70s really, gardening, there was a lot of use of shrubs. And then since then, there's this big wave of as perennials has really taken over. Now, much as I love perennials, I do find that in our climate in the winter, when everything dies down really from sort of November onwards, if you don't have some basic fillers or basic standout shrubs to anchor the garden, if it's a very wet, miserable winter, you just look at a load of silage as your perennials are under the ground and dying leaves. But if you've got a mainstay of a few really good shrubs, such as this one behind me, then it just holds the garden together through that season. And so I love shrubs, and I find increasingly I use the same shrubs more often because I find them most reliable. Shrubs are incredibly important for wildlife in the garden, far richer than perennials. They give year-round value, they give great shelter and of course shade, they provide nesting habitats, the flowers give nectar and pollen, their berries and seeds give great feed. Plant shrubs to boost your garden's fascination for the fauna. And on the top of my list for shrubs, I think I would have to put shrub roses. And these I find so good, and I tend to use ones that will survive in most conditions really quite well. So we've got very dry soil here, and the ones that do really well are things like Sally Holmes, which is a lovely bushy shrub rose with white flowers that flowers recurrently all along. Things like James Austin, which I've mentioned before, with that sort of deep crimson colour and a lovely bushy rounded habit that just pumps out the flowers from sort of late May through to sometimes Christmas. And then other ones like, I would say, Olivia Austin with its pinker flower that is also a very, very good, high-performing, disease-free rose. For Valentine's Day, which is coming up, there's obviously Bengal Beauty, which starts flowering sometimes in January here and goes right on through to Christmas. It was flowering Christmas Day here. It's a lovely single red flower. It's a bit more of an untidy habit, but if you gave a plant of that to someone on Valentine's Day in bloom, how much nicer than 10 red roses in a vase that were going to die a couple of weeks later. Anyway, so that's roses. I tend to use them in repeated clumps. So I've got an area like a courtyard, I'll use repeated clumps of the same rose, or maybe two different types of roses, I'd say maybe a white and a pink or whatever, in separate groups throughout, and they will just sort of frame the planting together. Now the other shrub that's obviously been really popular are the hydrangeas, and Hydrangea arborescens Annabelle is probably the most popular hydrangea because it just flowers in almost any conditions. And it looks good even when it dies down, the flowers die back, but you have the dead flower heads and they still look attractive. It's very easy to prune, it's very easy to grow, it's very easy to propagate, and so it's deservedly very popular. Now we are on very dry soil, and as I've mentioned before, hydra in the name does not mean they demand lots of water. It's to do with the shape of the seed vessel, which is named after something in Greek called hydra. So don't think if you're on dry soil. I am almost desert here and I hardly ever water my hydrangeas. Annabelle is probably the most popular, but a lot of the paniculate hydrangeas also grow easily and very well. And I always love Madame Mollier, which flowers on new wood and old wood with white flowers. It's a lovely shrubby form and it's beautiful to grow. I love Sargentiana with the velvety green leaves. I love other villosas. I love quercifolia. There are hundreds of hydrangeas, but for the one that's the most useful, best doer, I think I would go arborescens Annabelle. Now also when I'm doing my borders, and they'll probably be 30% shrubs, I would say, I also sometimes include structure, and here we've got a box ball. Well, it's a multi-stem box which I've just clipped up, and it's grown over the years into this shape. I will use different types of this evergreen structure within my borders. I might use myrtle to my right, which is lovely and has a beautiful flowers, and the blueberries that you can use for cooking with. You can see them just, the flowers just coming now, I think. Evergreen, slightly tender, but it's against the south facing wall. I will also use yew taxus, and that might be as a standard. It might be as a multi-stem clipped up like this. It might be as a pyramid or topiary. I might use holly in the same way as a standard clipped or whatever. They're lovely shrubs that you can put repeatedly throughout your planting to pull the perennials and the spaces together and give you that winter interest. So don't forget your more structural looking, perhaps shaped or partially shaped evergreens. I think they're so brilliant. And if I want to pep up the height, so if I'm buying maybe a load of new balls, I'll put them in a baseless pot within the planting, and that will just lift them up quite a bit. And I tend to do that either using a cheap plastic black pot, and I'll plant low yew hedging plants around the base, or I'll use a nicer pot like a terracotta and just cut the base out. But just by jacking up those structural elements, you're bringing the height higher, and then you have these things sticking out, and then the lower perennials and ground cover underneath. So I think that's always a winning formula. Escallonias, often thought of a bit sort of old-fashioned and seaside-ish, but they're evergreen, they're shrubby, and ivy is one that has panicles of white flowers in August, and it grows to up to about 3 meters high, and maybe 1.5 meters wide, and they can be used as hedges, which tells you you can clip them. So if you want to roughly shape your Escallonia ivy, you can do that. You can plant in a group of 5 of them or whatever, and then roughly shape them. And I think they're very useful. That they are much more hardy now with climate change. When I first started, I used to think they were a little bit iffy, but now I think they're perfectly hardy. Obviously, if you don't like the white form, but that's my favourite, you can also get pale pinks and deeper pinks and all sorts of colours of these evergreen escallonias. And when I'm talking about these, I often do put several together. So I would rarely use one unless it's a specimen like this. I would tend to put a group. Although having said that, the plant behind me, the daphne, Jacqueline Postil, Buddleja Jacqueline Postil, I have just got one because it's quite large, and I'm just standing in this cloud of fragrance which it's pumping out, and it was flowering before Christmas, way before Christmas, and it looks like it's going to go on for some time more. I've got lots of buds, and I do love the daphnes. They would be one of my next favourites. So I would be sad to have a garden without a daphne in it. Now this is quite a big one, but one of my favourites is Daphne odora aria marginata, which is much lower, maybe 1 meter high, something like that. And again, very fragrant, has a little white edge to the leaves that you hardly notice. I love daphnes. I think they are one of my favourite shrubs, and I would, yeah, as I said, I wouldn't want a garden without them. And I love the native daphne, which we have here, which I've talked about before, where I've taken seeds of Chris Baines's and taken cuttings from his plant, and I've got them growing now in my woodland area. I think they're just perfect. Euphorbias, spurges, I think are wonderful. And I've got one here, Pastorai John Phillips, which is quite large, and it's hardier than the other euphorbia mellifera, which is quite similar to it. But it's large and it seeds, and I think it's a wonderful, pretty much evergreen plant with wonderful flowers, and it's a bold plant, perhaps in light shade, perhaps in sunlight, I think many euphorbias are garden worthy, but that's a big, unusual, striking one. And then there's also the one that was called Wolfenii, which is much lower, maybe this sort of height, with a lovely sort of very limey green flowers. It's evergreen, that you need to cut bits out of every so often because it's sort of half shrubby in a way, but it's wonderful. And then working in France last week, we saw the lovely little native euphorbia, which was just growing through the woodland, but that's just a different idea altogether. It's much less shrubby, more herbaceousy really. But just don't forget euphorbias. They are easy to grow. They're wonderful plants, and it's lovely to have those beautiful limey green flowers. So they're a great addition to a garden. I love the pervoskias. I think they're really nice. That sort of, they're deciduous, but then you get these massive plumes of blue flowers. Blue spire is one that's larger, and then there's the lower one, which I think is lace, blue lace, which is slightly lower, but they've all got this lovely silvery foliage and then these beautiful clouds of blue flower. Easy to grow. They like a free draining soil, but they're quick to fill out. So that's one plant that I think is really worth having. And along those lines, lavender. You know, what garden on free draining soil in sun would be without lavender, because they're just archetypal in English gardens, I think. And I often use hidcote, angustifolia hidcote, which is hardy, not too big, and I use it quite a lot. Germander is a fabulous plant, Teucrians fruticans, and it is a plant from the Mediterranean, lovely silver foliage, lovely blue flowers. And if you get the form agadir, slightly more unusual, you've got deeper blue flowers, and they look lovely clipped into big silver balls as well. If you want to use them in a more formal fashion within your planting, that is something that I would definitely recommend. And whenever I use it in clients' gardens, they all say, "Oh, what is that? It's such a wonderful plant." So don't forget Germander. Now, abutilons. I've only been using abutilons more recently when they've been becoming increasingly hardy, but they flower for such a long time. They are deciduous, very easy from cuttings. You've got the lovely pink, pale pink one, which I've talked about before, which is Victorian Lady. And then you've got the more robust ones, which the sort of more common one, and you've got Nabob, which is a deep crimson one, which is lovely. So I'm increasingly using more abutilons in sheltered situations as the climate is definitely becoming warmer. And then I don't think you could do a list of shrubs without mentioning buddlejas. And there's more unusual ones like Buddleja salvifolia, the white form, which flowers much earlier with the lovely sort of felty leaves, and Lochinch with the beautiful blue flowers and the silvery foliage. There are hundreds of different buddlejas, the globosas with the orange balls, but really I think they are lovely to have in a garden. Maybe not in the most prominent position, but somewhere where the butterflies can enjoy them, and as can you. Obviously there's hundreds of other shrubs that I've left out, lovely things like magnolias, lilacs, rosemaries that you'd be loath to leave out, and I do use those a lot. But those other ones are the ones that I suppose I use most repeatedly in the more prominent places. And I hope you feel like trying some of them out, and I'd love to hear your comments on what you find to be your favourite roses. And please, if you've liked this video, just click the subscribe and the like button.